And now to Aruba news tonight about Natalie Holloway investigation. What just happened with the Kelpo brothers? Joining us from Aruba is Jossie Mansour, managing editor of Diario. Jossie, what happened over the weekend in connection with the Kelpo home?
Well, early Saturday morning at about 7 o'clock, a team of investigators arrived, Dutch and Aruban police. They arrived at the house. They wanted to look inside. They wanted to carry out an action called SHO. In other words, an inspection, not a search. And when they wanted to go inside, the Kalpu brothers, Deepak and Satish, didn't want them to go in, so they found themselves forced to handcuff them and take them away in a police car so they would not obstaculize the search or the inspection or whatever you want to call it. We call it a SHO. So after an hour of their being taken away, removed from the area, they were brought back. Sometime 5 or 10 minutes later, the father came and then the mother. They were not at home. Only the sister was at home when this inspection took place. Did the police or investigators seize anything from the home? No, they didn't, because in the action that they carried out, it's not a huiszoeking. In other words, it's not a search action. It's an inspection action. They were familiarizing themselves as to the surroundings of 2 of the 3 suspects in the case. What provoked this search? Did they have a tip, or they simply reinvestigating the case? What was it? I think it forms a part of whatever they planned in Holland after reviewing the whole case that brought them to Aruba. First they searched the Van der Sloot house, and now they're searching the Kalpu residence at Hooiberg in order to determine things that they found of interest while reviewing the whole case in Holland. They've had this case for about 5 or 6 months when they took all these documents with them to Holland. They reviewed them, they studied them, they came to some conclusions. They were sent to Aruba in full force, and they're carrying out whatever objective they're after in phases. Jossie, I mean, this is, I suppose, a little bit of voodoo. We all try to guess on, from the information we do have, but do you anticipate by May 30th, which is the 2-year anniversary of Natalie's disappearance, do you anticipate any charges brought against anybody, or is it just who knows at this point? I don't know the time period involved, but sooner or later they have to bring charges against them or let them go as suspects. They have no other choice. And then, of course, that would be the May 30th. Isn't that, at least we're told, that it's 2-year mark and they will be released as suspects? In a 2-year mark, but I understand from the ministry, the public ministry, Ministry of Justice, that is not a set date. I mean, it can be extended and was extended, from what we understand, in a press release that the Ministry of Justice put out. Extend to what day? Do they have a date, sir? Unlimited. No time limit was attached to it. All right, Jossie, thank you. You're quite welcome. Let's bring in John Q. Kelly, the lawyer for Natalie Holloway's parents. John, first, how are Dave and Beth?
They're doing fine. I mean, they're rather anxious right now. There's obviously a lot of new developments in Aruba. They've got a new team in place there, and they're looking into areas they haven't before, so they're just they're anxious, they're waiting, and they're hoping for some resolution.
It's hard, John, to understand the value of the Dutch authorities going into that home now. I mean, everybody in the media has been in that home 15,000 times, or at least a lot of people have. It's been 2 years it's passed, and it's almost like I'm thinking to myself, they're just in there now.
Well, they weren't. It wasn't a search warrant. They weren't looking for evidence, and it wasn't an examining judge who was in there with them, which would have been on a search warrant. It was a home inspection where the prosecutors go in there and just get a feel for the place. They look at the layout, they see where the bedrooms are, where the computers were, where the mother's bedroom was, where the car would have been parked, and they just get a feel for the area. And I think when you're preparing a case, you just have to have a good knowledge of the layout of every relevant area.
I agree totally, but there is never, at least at this point, any suggestion that Natalie was inside that home, and so absent a seizure of physical evidence or some clue, so simply looking around, you might as well look around in anyone's house at that point. Well, no, if that's the criteria.
There was a lot of communications between Satish and Deepak, and what went on in the house that are contained in the statements that 2 of them made to the police. So it's good to actually match up the statements they made to the physical layout of the house, and at least they're doing things that haven't been done before, and hopefully we'll see some progress.
John, one of the things that I kept hearing getting bounced around so often in this case is that the automobile that belonged to Deepak, and he was he always kept a perfect automobile, he loved his automobile, that one of the neighbors reported him washing it at a peculiar time. Was that before in the middle of the night before Natalie disappeared? Was that the night she disappeared, or the night after, or wasn't it even in the nighttime that the report was made?
It was a couple nights afterwards, and you know, that's certainly a bone of contention that they didn't do a proper forensic examination of the car early on, because there was the one place they certainly knew, and everybody was in agreement upon, that Natalie was in there. But as I said, they've got a whole new team in place now. They have 15 new Aruban detectives on the case. They have 7 Dutch detectives over there now, and the Netherlands Forensic Institute has been doing a lot of work. And, you know, we're just cautiously optimistic, and I think we're going to see some other developments in the next week or so.
How could they not have done a complete screening of the car? It was seized shortly after Deepak was arrested, which was early June 2005, and it wasn't returned to him until sometime almost a year later, I think it was. I mean, they certainly had time to go through the car.
Well, they did. They just didn't. I mean, with a lot of these
things... They just didn't?
They didn't do a thorough forensic examination. I mean, if they did, they would have had exemplars of everything, and they'd still have the car, too. I mean, there's no reason it ever should have been returned to them. So it was probably the single clearest and most obvious piece of valuable forensic evidence they had, and they let it go, which, you know, we're not happy with. But as I said, you know, hope springs eternal, and, you know, we're hoping something happens. I've been talking to them down in Aruba every day, and, you know, we've got to give the new team in place a chance and see what happens now.
In March of '06, we were in Aruba, and there was a for sale sign on Deepak's car in his driveway. Has he sold his car?
I don't know. I mean, we're well aware of the fact, and in fact, at one point, we were thinking of trying to, through a straw purchase or pick up the car ourselves. I don't know whether he actually sold it or not, but yeah, it had been, actually when it was on the market, they had seized it again for the reenactment also. So I mean, as far as forensic value now, I don't think there's any to the car, whether it's been sold or not.
All right, now 1 to 10 scale, 10 being the most optimistic. How optimistic are you that this matter will be solved for the next 2 months, or there'll be an arrest?
I'd say right down the middle there, Greta.
A 5.
Yeah, it's a toss-up right now, from what I've heard.
And 3 months ago, where were you? Were you at a 7 or were you at a 3?
I was probably below a 3. I've been, as I said, you know, cautiously encouraged by the conversations I've had with authorities down in Aruba, and you know, I've been told they're leaving no stone unturned, and hopefully we will see a resolution. You know, we're watching and waiting now.
Well, 5's up from 3, so I suppose that's good news. John, thank you.
Sure, Greta, thanks.
Coming up.